KGNU welcomes guest commentaries on almost any issue. If you have something you'd like to say, give us a call here at the station, 449-4885, or write your commentary down and mail it to us. KGNU, Post Office Box 885, Boulder, Colorado 80306. It's Box 885, Boulder 80306. And we'll get a hold of you about possibly reading your commentary on the morning magazine. It's KGNU Boulder, listener-supported community radio for Boulder County and beyond, at 21 minutes.
The Free Market and Flat Earth. I was reading a commentary by Georgianne Geyer the other day and got to thinking about the Flat Earth Society. These are people who maintain, for reasons of humor, I hope, that the Earth is in fact flat. Most of us have lived with the round Earth paradigm since about 1500. In addition to being a brutal slave trader, Columbus also proved to us that the Earth is round. Turns out, some people had known that the Earth was round for 1,700 years before Columbus. In fact, some people had calculated the circumference of the Earth to within 15% of its actual size. But those people were Greek, and we all know Greece hasn't had much of a role in the world since 200 years before the Common Era. So nobody of any significance believed that the Earth was round for another 1,700 years. No matter what evidence was presented to European pundits in the Middle Ages, they would claim that the Earth is perfectly flat, and would point out how marbles sit very still unless placed on a hill, which must prove that the Earth is flat, because if it were round, the marbles would roll no matter where you put them. To you and me, this seems perfectly stupid, but in 1300, if you suggested that the Earth was round, you'd likely be chased out of town and maybe burned. Georgianne Geyer is like those people in the Middle Ages who claimed, regardless of the evidence, that the Earth is flat. I say this because Geyer seems to have a hard time with reality. She writes about world affairs and always seems to not quite get it. I've often read her stuff and been thinking, this is interesting, but then she'll stumble and fall into some tired cliché about the rightness of the free market. It must be really frustrating being her, always on the verge of a critical insight, but just when she almost has it, the insight evaporates like a mirage in the desert of bourgeois ideology. Last week, Geyer wrote this column about the Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Army in Peru, whom she correctly understands are an inevitable product of the brutal realities of life in Central America, but the nature of those realities are completely beyond her. The fundamental dynamic of life in every country is the class struggle. This is fairly basic. Rich people who own factories and other businesses hire people to make or provide products or services which the rich people sell. For their efforts, the working people are compensated with a small percentage of the proceeds from the sale. The rest is called profit and is kept by the rich people so they can become richer. Sounds like your life, doesn't it? Profit is the surplus value between the cost of a good or service and the amount customers pay. Without exploited labor, there can be no profit. Geyer, like those before her, who desperately held on to the flat earth concept, believes that every society must function on the principle of private profit. So to her way of thinking, the Tupac Amaru are simply confused about their goals, because the only way for the people of Peru to bring themselves out of desperate poverty is through encouraging the Japanese and others to invest in their country, to come in, exploit Peruvian labor, and take their profits home. Geyer knows that the violence of poverty will generate a violent response from the peasantry, but due to her unshakable faith in flatness, she believes that these peasants are simply resisting the inevitable progress of the free market. After all, a rising tide lifts all boats, which is to say, a growing capitalist economy will supposedly raise the standard of living of everyone, not just the owners. This is just as foolish as believing that the world is flat. All available evidence from the last 200 years indicates that a rising capitalist tide actually floats a token small boat or two, and of course the really, really big boats. The first law of capitalism is the concentration of wealth. The free market has the immutable effect of concentrating wealth into fewer and fewer hands. Anyone who suggests that this is not the case is either desperately uneducated on the facts or, more likely, is lying. And I'm sure that it's only a coincidence that the people who make the most fuss about the supposed benefits of capitalism are already rich, and therefore more likely to get richer as the rest of us get poorer. Those are the facts. The world is becoming less stable. Everywhere you look, living standards are declining while poverty, violence, and misery are increasing. If the capitalist pundits were correct, the world would have grown more stable at the end of the Cold War. But, of course, it didn't, and cannot. Until people like Georgianne Geyer learn the actual facts of economics, including the inevitable concentration of wealth and the persistence of the class struggle against this unjust accumulation, they will remain forever confused and befuddled by world affairs. This is Richard Curtis.
I saw Woody Allen's movie The Front on